Welcome to Keep What You Earn, your judgment and jargon-free zone for entrepreneurs of all levels. Get ready to learn how to scale your business, save money in taxes, and create a business that grows your wealth. If it feels like the financial side of business is like eating your vegetables, well, then think of this podcast as the ranch dressing to make the process a little more enjoyable. My name is Shannon Weinstein. I'm a CPA and business owner on a mission to simplify money and empower others through knowledge. I hope this episode inspires you to take action, but remember that the information we share is for educational purposes only and is not individual tax advice. Now that we got that out of the way, let's start the show. So I come from a long career in customer service in one way or another, all the way going back to McDonald's through working in Big Four firms and working with clients, all the way to working in software companies and working with clients as well. And, client and customer experience has been a really big part of my journey and my career. And it's something that's become instinctual and a bit of like, that thing where, especially for my fitness professionals listening, this was always a struggle for me. Like when you go to the gym, you see someone with bad form and you're just like, ugh, like you notice things that, like, I'm not supposed to say anything. I don't want to say anything, but you have this like spidey sense. You have this extra sense of, oh, I'm noticing little details, because I know and because I've been trained on these things, I notice these little details. And this is something I can't shake when I enjoy different businesses, including like restaurants and other things. I pay attention to the operations. I pay attention to how they do things. And I've had several of these experiences recently, and I felt compelled to kind of create this episode for you as a list of things that personally drive me nuts as a customer, as somebody who cares about customer experience, and as somebody who comes from a background in customer experience, that if a business doesn't have these elements, then they're inherently at a disadvantage with me because it's something I've come to expect based on how I'm trained and how I'm educated and how I've, created my business and the business owners I've worked with. So I'm going to go through 3 things that will inhibit your customers from having a good experience with you that you may not even know is happening. And number 1, ultimately, is a clear proposal process or a clear sales process that ushers your customer through the different phases and makes them aware of where they are in the process. So I personally hate it when I have to follow up with vendors and service providers about their proposal after a call. If I have a call with someone, I nearly expect at this point, because I do this, I nearly expect to get an email that day, like by the end of the day, that day, with the proposal, the pricing, and the way to get started. Click the button, pay the invoice, whatever. At the latest, I actually expect that I'm going to get an invoice on that call, which I've experienced a lot of. And if I don't, then I expect to see it in my inbox by the end of the business day or shortly thereafter, depending on like time zones and all that. So I am the most excited as a buyer, as I'm sure you are, when right after hanging up the call with a possible service provider. So as a buyer, I'm the most enthusiastic about getting started when I'm on that call. So it's kind of like this flame, this, we always talk about hot leads, cold leads, right? So I'm the warmest, I am the hottest lead when I am on the phone with you and I've just said yes to you. And my flame will shrink, it will diminish over time. So when a service provider, I'm the prospect, I'm the customer. When a service provider comes to me and says, here's our proposal, and I'm like, great, let's do it, let's get started, I become sort of discouraged if I don't see the same enthusiasm to work with me. So I'm the most enthusiastic right when that sale is being made. And I want to get started immediately, where I just go, okay, what are the next steps? Send me the contract, send me the invoice, let's go. And then they don't do it. It makes me start looking elsewhere because I'm going, wow, okay, if you're not excited to work with me, if you're not excited to, start the process, then why should I be? And I completely take a turn. I pull a 180 and I'm like, well, now I'm really not excited about working with them because it feels like our energy isn't matching. It feels like they don't care as much about me as I do about working with them. So now I feel this misalignment and now I feel like, ooh, I think I want to look elsewhere. So keep in mind that your customers might be at that peak enthusiasm after your sales calls, like after you've initially pique their interest, if they've expressed that they want to work with you and they have the intention to, that is when you need to meet them at that energy level, enthusiasm to work with them and say, oh, I would love to work with you. Let's get on a call. Let's do this. And here's our proposal. And I'm not saying you have to, overwhelm them, but I'm saying that you should definitely not ignore them, definitely not take 3 days to respond, because that tells me that if you're taking 2 or 3 business days to respond, again, within reason, if you're away, whatever, just say that. But in a normal business week, let's say you take 2 or 3 days to get back to me, then I'm like, oh, do you even want my business? Right? Are you that, is this a lower priority for you than what you got going on? And if I'm the lower priority now, when I should be kind of the higher priority when I'm a new sale, if I already feel like I'm a lower priority, then what am I going to feel like when I'm, a few months or a few years into working with you? And it does give me that sense of discouragement. So I would say don't create barriers, in time or in steps. Don't create barriers for people to buy from you. Get them that proposal as quickly as possible, get them a link to buy as quickly as possible, and start delivering value as soon as you possibly can so that they're not regretting that decision and that they're really feeling the same enthusiasm from you that they had when they bought. And going along with that in terms of making things difficult for people to buy. Hey there, are you on LinkedIn? I love connecting with listeners and other professionals and business owners on that platform. I gotta say, I'm really enjoying it. So if we're not already connected, make sure you send me a connection request after this episode. One of the other things that drives me crazy that I've experienced recently is a labyrinth of a website. So I'll use this as an example. I wanted to go to a restaurant when I was traveling a couple weeks ago. And I wanted to find the menus for these different restaurants, as we all do, right? I made this joke that like restaurants really should have two things on one landing page: their hours and their menu. That is all I need to know. If I'm already at your website, I just need the hours and the menu, maybe your reviews, make that easier for me. But that's all I really care about. So, like opening up a restaurant's website and seeing like about us, our history, you know, so cool. But let me get there. Let me select that after I've already decided that there's something on the menu I want to order, because that's what I'm going for at the end of the day. Is I'm going there because there's something on the menu I'd like to order and eat for dinner. So when you have to have that awareness of creating the least amount of resistance and latency to somebody buying from you, to somebody enrolling, reserving, whatever that looks like. You have to create that low barrier for people to learn more about how they can work with you, how they can show up. So for example, there's a restaurant, have the hours right there front and center, the phone number front and center if you offer takeout, right? And then also having the menu front and center so people know what they're in for from a cuisine or from a price point, and they know what they're getting into. It just drives me nuts that when I see websites, even service providers, who there's no button that's like work with us. There's really no indicator of how I'm supposed to proceed or how I'm supposed to move forward in our relationship from a transaction standpoint. There have been plenty of people who I have been ready to pay, ready to click pay now, buy, send me invoice, and I can't figure out how to. And all it really takes is like 10 to 15 seconds for my excitement to click buy now, go do the thing, to forget it. I'm not going to bother, because I can't deal with navigating this huge website because you started with like about me, about us. You've made it about yourself. And now I can't figure out how you're going to help me or where I can find out more information about your solutions. It's all about you, or it's about background. And it's a lot of stuff I don't need to know. I appreciate it, but I don't need to know that. I don't need to read a whole article about the founder. I just want to know how I get my problem solved. And the last thing I will say in the sales experience that drives me nuts a little bit is when, especially if you have a qualification form, especially if you have some type of collection of information, if you do not offer to, or you don't offer any information back to me that I've shared with you. So if you're going to ask me, hey, what's your name, email, your company name, your profession, your website, if you're going to ask me for my website, go to my website. If you're going to ask me what I do, or more about my business, read it and refer to it in our conversation. Because what I've realized is that a lot of these businesses are collecting information and then not actually reading it. And it drives me a little crazy when I go to a sales call and the person on the other side is like, hey, Shan, nice to meet you. So tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me a little bit about your business, or tell me a bit about this, that, or whatever. And it's like, that was in your questionnaire and I filled it out. Or, so where are you based? Or what's the name of your company? What do you do? Tell me more about what you actually do. When I actually sent a whole message or a whole email or a whole, survey back to you that explained all this already. So whenever you're asking for the same information multiple times, and you've probably experienced this frustration a little bit with a doctor visit, because I can relate to this where you go to the doctor and there's a pre-appointment questionnaire, or they collect information over the phone when you book an appointment, and then you get to the office and then they give you that little clipboard with a double-sided paper that's like, hey, fill this out. And it's like, I already answered most of these questions, and like, you knew I was coming in. Why do I have to put my name, address, telephone number, social security, whatever it is, birthday? Why do I have to put all this on here? Or why do I have to give you my insurance information again? You know, so why do I have to keep doing this over and over again? Why couldn't you have, let's just say, for example, let's use the doctor. If you knew I was coming in at my 11 o'clock appointment, why wouldn't you have at 10:45 a clipboard on the counter with my name on it, with all my information filled out, with just the questions that you needed to know that were not already asked of me? That would be huge customer service. And that's where someone could do a very little thing that could differentiate an experience, is if you're not asking things on repeat and you're actually listening. That's the first time someone says something. That can really become a differentiator, because it is all too often and common that we experience the opposite. We experience the repeat questions. And it's going to be really crucial for somebody to succeed in this market when they can tap into those little details and they can understand, hey, this is something that people are annoyed by or struggle with. And we could eliminate that and then really become a leader in the market. We could really set ourselves apart. And sometimes it really is the littlest things that will set you apart and allow you to succeed, because it comes down to just understanding your customer and making them feel seen and heard. And all of these things that I've listed out will help you do that. And it's just important to understand the impact these things have. So let me recap. Clear proposal process and sales process, where people are really clear about, this is where I am in the process, this is what's coming next, and that they're getting the information they need as quickly as possible to know how to make a buying decision. Do not hold back and do not resist sending them information and sending them a proposal or an invoice as soon as they've said yes to buying. Then number two is having a website that isn't a huge labyrinth of information to make them work hard to find the information they need. Know your customers and know exactly how much information they need, but what they specifically need to make a decision, and put that front and center so that they're like, cool, above the fold. I already know what I'm supposed to do. Hours of the restaurant, menu of the restaurant, done. Make this easy for me to make a decision. And lastly is making sure that if you're going to collect information from your prospects, that you actually have a way to leverage that information and give it back to them to prove that you've collected it, you've read it, and you understand it. You can even make reference to things like, say, depending if it's appropriate to collect this, spouse's name, your dog's name, your kid's name, and actually call them by name in a call. Huh, interesting. If someone said to me, hey, what would Jason think about that? Number one, I'd be creeped out. But number two, I'd be like, oh, yeah, they did get that information from me. And ooh, they remembered. It's kind of nice to have someone recall something you've said, because it shows trust and respect. So make sure you're leveraging that as well in your interactions. All of this will help you maximize how you earn revenue and how your customers view you. Because I truly believe when you have an exceptional customer experience, that will differentiate you enough that, you could have the best marketing in the world, but ultimately your customer experience is what's going to set you apart and allow you to really soar. We realize that CFO services may not necessarily be accessible to everybody. And that's why we have packaged our CFO services into a power session for you. With this single purchase session, you'll be able to navigate the financial scorecard with me personally on your business and figure out what constraint you need to unlock next. We're going to give you direction, clarity, and we're going to find ways to increase your profitability, increase your cash flow, and make sure you never run out of money. Okay, if you're interested in booking a power session with me, I only do a couple per month, so make sure you jump on quickly and sign up. Check the link in the show notes for more information. I can't wait to see you in a power session. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating and review on your podcast platform. This small action goes a long way for podcasters to get our message heard by more business owners just like you. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to information about our guests and ways to get in touch with me. We'll see you on the next episode.